Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alive. My name is Patina, and I feel very honored that you chose to participate in this Alive interview today. And I thought that I would begin the interview with a little bit of controversy because, hey, why not? A few weeks ago, I had someone come up to me and he said that we can say a blessing over our family and no illness will ever fall upon them. And he said that it's a promise that's found in Scripture. And some of you may believe that. But I want to give you a different perspective. What about the person who says, because I suffered and because I was sick, now I'm closer to God? Or to the person who says, before I was sick, I was just going through the motions of my faith. What if the suffering that we experience can actually tune our ears so that we can hear God more clearly than we ever have before? These are really big spiritual questions, but I think that they're necessary things that we really need to talk about. And my guest today will tell you that suffering brought him closer to God. Larry Smith is my friend. He's a leader at my church, at First Church Oviedo, and he is our resident Chick-fil-A guy. So I would like to welcome Larry to Alive.
Hello. Good morning. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me in today and look forward to chatting with you a bit about my story.
I'm excited for them to hear it. I know we had our pre-interview, and I was going to say, like, you've been on my interview radar for a long time. You may not have known that, but I think that I had Debbie reach out to you a while back to schedule an interview, and then everything got complicated, and we couldn't do that, and so it never really worked out. So I figure right now it must be God's timing that you're here on the program, and for everyone listening, when I did the interview, or the pre-interview a few days ago, you kind of quickly went through all of your early life. And I would try to dig down a little bit, and you kept like going on. And then I realized that you were trying to get to something that happened recently. And because of that, greatly impacted your life. And so I thought I would make you endure that process again of going through your early life, so that people will get to know you and understand a little bit of your backstory, because I find that helps them understand where you are today. So I thought, why don't we kind of begin with how you grew up, and did you grow up in a Christian family and that kind of part of your life?
Yeah, I mean, and to start with, I know that trials and tribulations, obviously, and I felt them in several aspects of my life, but they build character, and I'm proud to say that where I am today is a whole lot better place. But my childhood started out extremely well. I got my first horse when I was 4 years old, and we had property, and my dad had his own business, and we lived in a Christian home. We were in church every time, Southern Baptist. We were in church every time the doors opened, and it was I actually was baptized when I was 11 years old, and not unlike a lot of other folks that were going through that same thing. I don't know that I had all the right reasons for getting baptized, but and a lot of it was impressing my parents that I love so dearly. Unfortunately, about a year later, my dad left us all, and he left us with there was three of us children, and my mom, and I mean, shoot, they'd been married for at least 10 years, and it all went away. My mother ended up selling the property, and I understood it, but I didn't really understand it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like, all the things that I did, the work in the garden, the picking up the pecans out of the cutting the grass, 3-acre grass with a push mower for a while, because they didn't believe in a riding lawnmower. Even though I complained about all these things, the feeding of the horses and the feeding the catfish, all those things went away, and I said, "Whoa, what did I have?" And it was really a cool thing to grow up like that. But then I went into a different aspect of my life, and
so you were 12?
I was 12 at the time, and started drifting. I started really drifting and blaming. I'm asking God, why? Why is this happening?
So your dad, just to get a little clarification, your father, so he leaves Did he stay in the same community as you?
He stayed in the same area, stayed in and left for another woman, and she had 3 children, and there were 3 of us children, and we kind of got put to the back burner,
Yeah.
and a lot of things changed, and didn't really feel all that good back at the time. But
You said when in the pre-interview that you felt like that you had to grow up. What did that mean?
yeah, back then, I mean, I took it that, okay, I was the oldest of the children. I was 12 years old, and I said, gosh, man, I'm going to really have to, to grow up and take care of my mother and the younger siblings. And I just started, it just started a process of where, okay, then I go to work, and I'm still working for my dad in his construction business. And at a very, very young age.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
obviously were
yeah.
very young when you were working.
And
Okay.
it was initially, it was just me going with him. He'd go around and catch, whatever he did, I did. I was just there with him, and that all changed after he left. And he actually put me out on a construction crew, but looking back, it was a great experience. I mean,
Yeah.
I was the best electrician, in that community in Mississippi back at the time.
And you seem like, so you're the first person, by the way, this is a kind of a tangent, to ever bring notes to an interview. So I can see you have that that work ethic, that overachiever. I'm going to do a good job. It's no wonder that you were the best electrician.
Well, and hard work for me was something that was just built into me, even back at that age, and I took on a lot of responsibility. Maybe I didn't even need to, but
Yeah.
I took that ownership, and my mother was not. She was a mess. I mean,
I bet she was.
And it.
Did
it
she
was
remarry?
sad.
And
She did eventually,
Okay.
remarry, but it was just a rough period then, and it just sent me on a spiral, down to, where I was feeling sorry for myself, and I'm sad to say this, but because I didn't have any reason to really feel sorry for myself. I mean, things were not that bad. I can think of a lot of others that were going through worse, but
that's a pretty traumatic event when you're a child, like your dad just like up and leave and like with no warning. Maybe your mom suspected it, who knows? But then the next thing you know, your world is turned upside down. Everything you thought was reality is not anymore.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure.
So you're in middle school, which is like also a super hard time for that to happen. And then how did that play out in your high school years? And, who was Larry back then?
Well, I unfortunately not a very good person. I got in a lot of fights. I just a lot of stuff, that I'm not proud of, and obviously I don't want to spend too much time on. But I became pretty much a punk, and I told you that earlier. I was just didn't think about anybody but myself.
Yeah.
Pretty much that's the guy I became.
Do you feel, did you stay in relationship with your dad and in your dad's business until what age? How did that all pan out?
I did, actually, and so I stayed. I continued to work for my father every summer and on Saturdays and what have you. Really felt like I couldn't go out and do things that maybe others did, like football and swimming and what have you, because I felt like that was my responsibility, and I also felt like I was going to eventually take on that business, but and that business was worth a lot by the time I graduated high school. I mean, it was a lot of money back then, and a lot of money now even, but by the time I got to college, that all changed.
You said he started bringing in his new wife and her daughters into the business. Is that kind of?
Yeah, and I kept taking a back seat and I kept trying to prove and but it just wasn't working. And so I went to college. I worked my way through school as an electrician. I was a master electrician when I was freshman in college.
Oh,
So,
wow, I didn't know. Okay.
Because I'd been through
I
the
have some work
formality
that
of
needs
that.
to be done. Can you? I'm sorry.
Because of this, because of the situation, I really don't like doing that work anymore. I really don't. That's just the truth of it all. Even my wife asked me around the house, well, you don't mind hanging a ceiling fan or something?
No.
Okay, but I'll do it. But I'd rather find somebody else to do it. But at any rate, so I moved on through college, and again, not a very nice guy. Still, not in a lot of trouble, but guys will be guys, and I spent way too much time fighting and doing kind of stuff like that, and thought I was really something, but I was looking back, I was not at all.
Yeah.
So, but at any rate. And so I get through college, and by the time I get back from college, the business is basically gone.
Wow.
I mean, they have completely taken a business that was worth a lot of money, and now it's pretty much worth nothing.
Oh, my goodness.
And so, new start, good for me.
Yeah.
Found my wife, Vicky.
Yes, awesome.
And,
in college, you found her?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And we got married in 1985. And so that was like 6 years after I graduated high school. We were perfect for one another, although I wasn't very perfect for her. She was perfect for me, I should say.
Yeah.
She helped me to see things in a different perspective. Always been very supportive of me. We waited 7 years before we had children, so not a lot changed for me. I was still that spoiled, selfish guy that didn't want to give up things like golf and softball and hunting and fishing and that's just what I wanted to do. And she allowed me to, which was great.
But you had no children at that point.
Didn't know children, and then children came 7 years later, and whoa, everything changed then. And so finally, we were able to start attending church regularly. Not that we didn't ever attend. We were the folks that rarely attended.
Yeah.
But then when children came, we made a commitment that we were going to raise our children, the way they should be raised in church, and we went on about that, and things were good. I felt like at that point though I was just going through the motions. I was really just trying to. See God, see what I'm doing. I mean, I'm good, right? I mean, I'm a good guy, but never really any devotional relationship with God back.
Do you
at that
feel
time,
at all?
so.
Maybe this is a stretch, but that you were, in a way, trying to live out like your rejection from your father? I mean, just kind of going through the motions, trying to do things to please God. Were you, or just it was?
I'm sure there was some of that was driving me there too. But I guess my overlying point there is that I was doing it for all the wrong reasons.
I gotcha. Yes.
Okay, see what I'm doing? I mean, it was never, just, God, what would you have me do?
Yeah.
I mean, and so a lot of that.
So but you guys started going to church. Were you going to a Baptist church at that time? And
we actually started going to a Methodist church.
Look at you. You got saved or something?
Yeah, exactly. I got converted. But yeah, we were actually going to a Methodist church. Vicki she was Baptist too. And but she had went to her grandfather's church and and really liked it, and it was Methodist, and so we just said, well, let's try Methodist together, and we've stuck with that all through the years.
So you were there, and by this time you're doing really well business wise, right? You have a good job. You're doing all kinds of success.
I'm doing very well. I'm still not really content in my career. I always wanted to have my own business and there's still some of that, going on. Still reeling a little bit from the whole, piece, and not really even though I was doing well, and I worked for Westinghouse at the time, and had a very, very responsible job. And Vicki, of course, was the homemaker and the child taker or caretaker rather. And she, was totally content with it and very good at it.
Yeah.
And, so it allowed me to really focus. And here I was, those 60-hour-plus weeks and trying to overachieve and everything. And that was probably part of my frustration, too. Instead of being, somewhat content where I was, I was always where would I like to be?
Yeah,
Where do
you
I
were
think I'd
looking
like
at
to
the
be?
future of what you want. Yeah, rather than being where you were.
Right, right.
Interesting. So now you land. You're going to church, kind of going through the motions a little bit. Vicky's at home staying with the kids. You're out being the businessman, making a living. Probably still kind of doing some of the things you wanted to do. Along with that, is that right? I mean,
Well, back at well, after we had kids, I no more softball, no more golf, no more. I hadn't been hunting in years, and all of that stuff stopped, and I was okay with that.
yeah.
I started umpiring so I could make some extra money, and then I
Okay.
started using that electrical,
Yeah.
construction. I had sideline jobs that I would work on,
Oh
on the
wow.
weekends, and just to try to, compensate for the one income family, and I was totally content with that. Just wasn't quite content with where my career, the level that it
Yeah.
was
So
going. So
so it's interesting. And you're at the United Methodist Church, and you said something about that you met this guy there that you guys wanted to do something with food. What was
yeah,
that?
yeah. So fast forward a little bit to because I went from Jackson, Mississippi, to Birmingham with Ashland Chemical Company, and then we stayed there a couple of years and moved to Tampa. Stayed there a couple of years with Ashland Chemical
Okay.
Company as a plant manager, and then I found my way up to Clorox in Atlanta,
Hmm.
and found Providence United Methodist Church. Met a guy from Chick-fil-A, and wow, now he has a vision, and he goes and buys this cooker, and it's a cooker from Smoky Bones on eBay where they had closed one. We started cooking every holidays, and we decided that we were going to make some money for the church, and made enough money in a couple of years' time that we bought 2 vans for the church just on the
Oh wow.
proceeds from all of that. I mean, it was a really really popular thing. I guess Tom had he had that Chick-fil-A slicing things on how to cook. I did not. I had never had any experience cooking it other than a little bit on the grill. So. But at any rate, so we became very, very good friends. And I was so intrigued with how he'd wear his Chick-fil-A ties to church. And I just never seen anybody feel that way about their job. I mean,
Yeah.
it was really kind of, wow, is this real? But I started down a path then, and I started thinking about, that underlying objective to eventually own my own business. And I started talking to him about that. He says, yeah, well, you should apply. And I did. And 2 weeks later, I got a rejection letter that said, thanks, but no thanks. And
It's
so,
weird to me. Let me just
yeah,
share the process with Chick-fil-A. So you have to send an application or a request to corporate.
right.
They evaluate it, and then they decide who's going to be their franchise owners. Do you put money in, right?
Not until you're selected, of course.
Okay, when
But
you're selected, then okay. So how do they evaluate? What's their evaluation?
it's a lot. I know that. I mean, back at the time, the application, they've shortened it some since, but the application was like 25 pages long.
Oh wow.
And it was just filled with, I mean, they knew you.
Yeah.
They knew me, and I don't know what they missed about me, but they missed something about me, obviously, back
Eventually,
then.
they missed it. First time they kind of had it.
Yeah. But
So you went. So you get that rejection letter. With this, I think this is a super important point because sometimes we are rejected, but you believed, right, that you felt something within you more powerful than that rejection. What was that?
I remember the day after I got that week, I'd received that letter, and I spoke to Tom about it at church that Sunday, and I said, yeah, they're really not interested in me, Tom. He says, hold that thought, and I said, okay, well, okay, so maybe we'll talk about it later. Not really, thinking too much is going to happen from that, but then I go home, and back then you read the Sunday paper.
Yeah.
And I see this article in there about the Chick-fil-A franchise ownership. And it talks about, I didn't even know this at the time, but it talks about it's a $5,000 investment. And I'm like, well, I can do that. I'm a blue-collar franchise all day long, So, eventually I talked back with Tom, and he says, Larry, don't give up. He said, if this is something you really think you're called to do, then he gave me a list of 8 operators to go visit in Macon and Athens, and I was in Atlanta at the time, obviously, but and so I'm traveling over and I'm making these interviews with these folks, and I'm telling, hey, give me the ugly, give me the bad and the ugly, because I
So
know
who are
what
you
the
saying
good.
that to at this point?
These are other operators
Oh,
that have been
okay.
successful, and Tom had
Okay.
a list, a specific list of the operators that he wanted me to go to.
So do you have to be willing when you have a franchise to go wherever they send you?
Well, it certainly increases your chances. I had given them 7 states that
Okay.
I would go to
Okay.
back at the time. We lived in Georgia, and I told them, I said I'd be happy to stay right here in Atlanta, and they were like, "Yeah, bet you would."
Yeah.
yeah. So, but
So you went and you visited all these places, and what's the outcome of that?
I continued to get more passionate about the whole thing. And I mean, obviously, I saw in these successful operators. I mean, they make it look easy, right?
Yeah.
And so you
Oh,
see
yeah.
all of that, and you don't know the background of it. And I'm thinking, well, I can do this, and I want to do this, and I think God wants me to do this. And so I continued to do that, or finish that rather. And then I linked in by Tom. Here's Tom again. He says, why don't you talk to Carlos, who I submit the application to, and see if maybe he could recommend somebody for you to go and just visit with and get to know, and maybe spend some time in the restaurant. And I did, and I started working at a drive-through only in Atlanta area every Saturday. And I'd go in at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was so excited. I don't know why exactly, but I mean, and I told him, I said, I want to do the ugly stuff. I want to do clean out the fryers. I want to unload your trucks, and
That's awesome.
I want to do the things that nobody else wants to do. And I actually told him back then, I said, look, if there's a chance that maybe this is not what I'm supposed to do, this may help me find that,
Yeah.
But I don't know what's going to turn off the switch. But I was pretty close to God back then. I mean, because I had a lot to ask for.
Right.
I felt like this was it, and I just kept warming up passionately.
So hearing God, how would you explain that? How did you believe that it was God calling you to this?
Well, I'll tell you this. I went through the Rick Warren's 40 days
Yes.
of purpose-filled life, and just that was all about that same timing, and I started just feeling like I was getting things from the Word, and I was finding more and more things to get excited about, and like this was it, and.
Was it like God created you to do this? Did you feel that way?
I really felt that way
Yeah.
back then. But there was a lot of different reasons, and they were smaller reasons, but I just felt like this is what I was supposed to do.
So so how long did it take from the time you first applied to the time you did get a store, and where was that store?
It was about a year for me, but I will tell you this, Bettina, only because the first store, after I told them back and forth several times, said, I'm not going to go away. I mean, I literally told them that, and I think they kind of felt sorry for me at some point and said, okay, well, look, we've got this store in Orlando, Florida, that perhaps you and your wife should go take a look at. And they didn't speak a lot about how nobody else wanted it at that point.
Yes.
And I couldn't really see it.
Yeah.
But when I got there, I'm just seeing what the same thing I saw in the Georgia area, all these successful operators, or what it could be,
Yes.
although it wasn't.
Yes.
It was trash all in the parking lot, and nobody was maintaining. And I'm thinking, I can fix this, and I can fix this. After the visit, of course, I got an MBA in 2000, and I thought I was really smart then.
Yeah.
So I started doing SWOT analysis,
Yes.
and all of this, and sending this in. And Chick-fil-A was like, we've never had anybody quite do anything like this. And so I think they were kind of warming up to the idea, and they called me in for an interview, and then they started talking about how, Larry, nobody wants this unit. I mean, we're considering to close this unit. It's just a low-volume freestander. It's in a bad area. Chick-fil-A didn't miss very often, but they missed with this one. And why would you want to do this? Because God's called me to do this.
That's it. Yeah.
So, and I stayed true to that, and I knew that was. I felt so good about it. I knew that was what I was supposed to do. And then I got there, and wow, Then I realized why nobody else wanted that unit.
Yeah.
And I mean, even as a second store, I mean, it was a lot of problems. I mean, we had people sleeping in the play area. We had a whole group of homeless out here in the back that were living out there. We
Mm.
had prostitutes in the restaurant every morning soliciting our customers.
Oh, wow.
It was quite a challenge.
Yeah.
So
So you took it,
took it.
and it must have been hard on you and your family, I
It
would
was hard
imagine.
it was a little hard on me, but
Yeah.
looking back, I really regret that I put my family through that. The outcome's not so bad,
Yeah.
now, but
But God was calling you to it.
yeah, and I considered that,
Yeah.
but I had a third grader, a
Yeah.
seventh grader, an eighth grader, a wife of like 22 years at that time, and this is it.
Vicky's awesome to like put up with that.
Yes, because we moved from the bubble in Atlanta.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
in like the fourth best school system in the nation,
Oh my goodness.
and we moved to here.
I need to have Vicky on the show.
Yes, you probably
The
should.
other
Yes,
side of the story.
Yeah.
But you turned it around with God's help.
We did. I mean, God worked with us, and a few years later, 3 to 4 years later, we kind of met the break even point from the pay cut that we took. It was awful. I mean, I was making about 5 times less than what I was making
There you go, yeah.
Atlanta to come here, and then all the challenges. I'm thinking 5:30 in the morning, rolling up biscuits back there, hiring and firing every day because it was a must.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I mean, people were just leaving, and people. If you came in and you had most of your teeth, I was going to hire you. I mean, I'm telling you were not even safe if you came in the restaurant and it looked like you might need a job. I was all
Yeah.
over you. So anyway, but we made it through with God's help, and so it. Now we're feeling pretty good. We actually hit symbol of success back in 2011, 4 years later, and won a car.
Wow.
Or won a truck rather, and things started really picking up, and we surpassed where we were, and things are getting a little bit easier. And then in 2015, if you're ready for me to go there,
Let's do it.
they gave me another position at a double the volume restaurant that had opened in 2009. It had a really stunning effect on our business. And we took that one on at Orange Avenue, and wow, I mean, life really changed at that point. So now I'm going from what was about 40 people to over 100 people,
Wow.
and I can see the opportunities that for influence. And now I'm joining up with the church here and starting to usher again, which I was doing over in Atlanta, and just really enjoying life. I mean, life is good, right? And but still, there was still something missing. I mean, I wasn't as appreciative as I should have been, for God allowing me to go through that. I mean, obviously, I learned a lot through the perseverance and what have you. God has good way of developing character through tribulations, but I just wasn't. There was something missing, and so.
So, and we're going to get to that because you had a big change in your life just recently. But what do you think, looking back on the Chick-fil-A, all those moments that, God calling you to Chick-fil-A, why do you think he called you to be at Chick-fil-A?
Well, I think Chick-fil-A's had such an incredible influence on me. I mean, if you look at Chick-fil-A, the purpose of Chick-fil-A is to honor God by being a faithful steward of all things that are entrusted to us, and to have a positive impact on all that we encounter.
Wow.
I mean, and when you can kind of live that through that, I mean, I don't know that I'm there yet, but when you could kind of live through that as a
Yes.
purpose for a company, and you use those Christian principles to honor God and do business, which are fine. The Christian principles in business are all fine. I mean, there's
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with that, So and I just believed that that was for me, because that was going to help me to grow my relationship
Yeah.
with Christ and help me continue to be successful in that whole sense.
It's pretty amazing because I don't think I can tell you of any Chick-fil-A that I drive by that doesn't have a line. A
We are blessed.
long line. I mean, as a matter of fact, my husband loves Chick-fil-A and he's like, the line is so long. And then I always say, yeah, but the line moves quickly. So anyway, and you're gonna get what you order, and the people are gonna be nice to you, and so all of those things, they definitely have a reputation, and for that, or they wouldn't have the business. So praise God for that. But you said there's still something missing. There was this. You're right at this point. You're here at this church. I know you from being on leadership and staff parish and very active in the church. So something happened to you. And when we were doing the pre-interview, that's what I said. You're like, but everything changed about 10 or 11 weeks ago.
Well,
Talk about that.
so from 2014, I think, is when we joined here, and then in 2018 is when I had some people ask me to join up with the staff parish committee, and that was a great experience. Been a great experience. I'm still serving on that committee, but and it just helped me to grow my relationship with God. So now I've got a double whammy. I'm getting some things from church, and I'm getting some things from Chick-fil-A, and I'm just really really growing, but still, it's just not. It's kind of like I'm trying to impress the wrong set of people. I'm trying
Yeah.
to impress the world about how good of a person I am, and instead of looking to God
Yeah.
to humble myself every day, and hey, where do you want me?
Yeah.
And so I had a knee replacement surgery on February 24th of this year. And that was on a Thursday. The next Wednesday, I checked myself into the hospital and I thought it was just a medication that I was taking for that, but I couldn't eat. I was nauseous. I couldn't hardly do my physical therapy. And I went for 2 days without eating anything. And I only had water, and I just didn't want anything. So I checked myself in, and I'm laying there in the hospital, ended up having some infection and what have you here. And that Thursday, March 3rd, I'm on the IV and just laying in the hospital as a result of the infection. And God just spoke to me. He says, Larry, he says, you're not a terrible guy or anything. You're okay. But if you just get rid of some of these distractions that you have in your life and just make more time about the things that matter and let me have some of these other things, I think you can do a lot more. And that was 10 weeks ago.
So before
And
you talk, what does it mean? So they understand. What does that exactly mean? Like, how did God speak to? Like, what was going on?
I was kind of half conscious. I feel like, it was just so vivid. I mean, when God spoke to me here, I never had that kind of encounter
Yeah.
with God before. Most of my encounters before were crying about something, help me, help me, help me. But this was, it was just he was
Yes.
Larry. Let me make sure that you're listening.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and from there's been a lot of listening time, that I've had. I've had a
Yeah.
lot of isolation time from there. I went through 3 procedures in a 6-week period where I had anesthesia,
That's unheard of.
and so I spent a lot of time in my chair. I'm so tired of the chair by now, but I've spent a lot of time in the chair.
Yeah.
I ended up that before I went into the hospital even. I saw this thing from David Jeremiah on a Sunday morning, and I said, "Whoa!"
David Jeremiah, if in case people don't know him, he is a preacher and he's written lots of books
Very much,
and so
very
okay.
much. And so I watched the program on Sunday morning, which was not really what I did on Sunday mornings, but it for somehow that was there, and I just said, "Well, I've heard of David Jeremiah, I just never." So I watched this interview, and it became very simple to me because he says, the only unpardonable sin is for you to turn your back on God. And I'm starting to think, well, wow. I mean, I know how God has spoken to me, and I know that, I feel real energized by that. I know there's something that I'm supposed to do, and it just kind of converted for me that I've got to get pretty serious about. I mean, I don't know when the end is, but I know there's a lot of people that might need some help,
Yeah.
and I want to be a part of that. I want to get on the right side of things for a change, and I want to serve God's kingdom wholly with all my heart.
Yeah.
And so there's where we were, and we kind of took off from there. I've read three books of David Jeremiah's now. I bought his study Bible, and I love it. Now I just, I used to read what I was supposed to read for the devotions that I get, but now I just pick up the Bible and start reading. I mean, I open it
Amen
up
to
and
that.
okay,
Yeah.
here's a good place right here,
Yeah.
and so and I'm just loving it. I'm just loving being in God's Word, and I actually spend two hours a day now. And it doesn't seem like that much time, but I'm just there for 2 hours, and I'm trying to understand what is it that you have for me today, and then I'm talking to God all through the day too.
That's it.
It's just, and it's just when you start your day with God. I tell people I live a joy-filled life because get up in the morning, get some Jesus first,
That's it.
and then work on helping others. And if there's any time at the end of the day, then you worry about yourself.
Yeah.
It used to be completely backwards of that. So
I mean, I love it so much. So now, I'm hearing a couple things. Number one is that you prioritized hearing from God, and then just the sermon on Sunday, you are practicing the presence of God throughout your day.
absolutely.
And so you've put yourself down here and you've elevated God. And when you elevate God, then everybody else is elevated in your life because that's what he wants.
That's exactly right.
And but what's interesting to me is that you can go through anybody, I say we can go through our entire lives and we can be Christian and we can be going to church and we can love God, we think, but you said something important. You said you were trying to please other people and show people what you were doing. But God is saying, I just crave a relationship with you. Like that's all God,
He doesn't have a lot of ask. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, if I put myself in his position, I'd have a lot of things I'd be asking of folks.
Yes.
And I don't really feel like that's the case. I mean, he just wants you to be in a relationship with him and be close to him and listen.
Yes.
And spend time, every day listening. So
And it's not a drudgery. I mean, I feel the same way. It's like getting up in the morning for me, pouring a cup of coffee and sitting there reading and praying is the best part of my entire day. It's like I wouldn't trade that
No.
for anything.
Not at all. Not at all. I used to wake up in the mornings at 4:30, like I do now, and it was always hustle bustle, get the cup of coffee, hit the road, shower, hit the road, and and go to work.
Right.
And and I thought I was busy,
Right.
but I wasn't very productive, in
That's a
what I
good
was
point.
doing. So
What would you say? You come from a particular demographic of businessmen and hardworking people and people who have been successful. Do you have any words of advice that you would give any of them on how, what would you tell them to change their life?
I'd say you got to prioritize God. I mean, and you got to put Him in control of your heart and your and everything. He wants your heart, your soul, and your strength.
Yeah.
He wants all three of them.
Yeah.
And He doesn't only want your hands, but He wants everything, the heart and all.
100%.
And and I will tell you this, that I have been so blessed. The blessings that I received in the last few years have been beyond anything that I ever imagined. And I know that that's as I become closer and closer to God. And then in the midst of all this, God, you find where God's preparing you for things. Now I'm prepared to be a better grandfather, right?
Yeah.
And I'm prepared to be the father that my kids need. Even I got a 24-year-old, a
Yes.
28-year-old, a 29-year-old. They still need a better father. So I would say just if you just make time for God and listen to what He has in store for you and then go do your best to live it out, you will be blessed beyond all measures. So,
I love what I think it's Psalm 37:4 says, if you delight yourself in the Lord, He will give you the desires of your heart. Like delighting, that moment of like literally delighting in God and God's presence and what God is saying and God's purpose.
right.
He gives you the desires of your heart because then your desires are God's desires. And it's amazing. So you said in the beginning, I opened with that your suffering brought you closer to God. And that's what happened. Is that
It's
right?
exactly what happened. I didn't have any choice for a while there. I couldn't run away.
You couldn't busy yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't busy myself, go do something,
Yeah.
but I'm there. And it inspired me to say, okay, well then if I'm going to be here, then what do you want from me, God? And now I just talk to Him all day long. I mean, and here's
Mhm.
something else that I've seen here recently, and I'm not amazed by it anymore, although I would have been back at the time. But everything kind of connects together. The sermons that you and Brian have been preaching, we're so blessed with, by the way. But the sermons that you guys have been preaching, the devotionals that I get through FCA and through David Jeremiah and through Brian James and all of that stuff just seems to connect together. And
Right.
the overlying thing is that just listen.
Yeah.
Listen to what God has to say.
Yeah.
And it's just
I love now. Okay, so you said that before that you never felt contentment fully. Do you feel that now?
I feel it completely. And to the point that people ask me, they say, will you ever get another Chick-fil-A? That's not what I want. I don't want another Chick-fil-A. You know why? Because I know that my role in this business is to be somewhat of a chaplain, somewhat of a coach, somewhat of just a father figure, to so many. I mean, we've got over 100 employees, and I know that every day my role is to go in and I love it. Truett Cathy once said, if you love what you do, you don't have to work anymore.
Amen.
And I tell everybody I'm a lazy guy.
Yeah.
So but I go in every day and I spend time with folks on both sides of the counter. Our business is so successful. I mean, all the metrics that Chick-fil-A tracks. I mean, we're
Yeah.
we're nailing it in so many areas, and I give that glory to God and
Yeah.
that credit to God. But yeah, it's just life is. I mean, I can't imagine having a second store back to that.
Right.
Because how would I split my time, and how would I,
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like that the routine that I'm in right now, and the 2 hours in the morning, and going to work and experiencing what I do, and it's just hitting me, and then all the roles and what have you here at church, and it's incredible.
So let me ask you this, because I kind of hear this from you now. Because before it seemed like, before this happened to you, there was always this a little bit of striving to become, striving to have more, striving to do this, right? But that's gone. You're not striving anymore.
I am not. And the discontent has gone away as well. I mean, how could I be discontent?
Yeah.
I mean, I get up every morning and I praise God and I thank God that that I'm able to live into the life that I'm in right now. I'm not thinking about the time that I've spent in a hospital and these procedures and all of that, and the ongoing things there. I think about what can I do today that will have an everlasting impact on God's kingdom.
I love that.
So,
And what we didn't talk about, we didn't really get into the details of all of your illness because you lost 28 pounds in 3 days.
yeah.
You had multiple surgeries. You said you had to sit in a chair for days and days and days and days. You really don't even like the chair anymore.
Yeah.
So now through that period of time, which was, how long was that period of time that you were out of commission, basically?
Well, better part of 6 weeks all total that I was, I mean, not that that I spent that much time away from work, but I could not go to work for very long. And then there was a period of time, for up to 6 weeks where I wasn't supposed to drive through some of the medications that I was taking, so I didn't,
Yeah,
and I just spent
of
a lot of
course.
time, away. And but
I
but it,
mean,
it's just God is so good. I mean, goodness
yeah,
gracious. I mean, I think if you get up in the morning and you're looking for things that are going wrong, then you can find them.
absolutely.
And if you get up in the morning and you praise God for all the things that are going right, you can find those
And
too.
that's it.
So
Once again, that presence of God, that God is present. He's with us. We're just not aware of it. We get and there is that busyness in our life and those things that cause us to not see, not hear. Like I said Sunday, like I believe that we have to interrupt our busyness with an awareness of God. Like we're so busy that we have to interrupt our busyness just to make time. Is there anything else that you have that you feel like you want to say or that we missed or anything?
just a couple of things that I believe we've learned over the years. And I would encourage you, if you would go on Chick-fil-A, or not on Chick-fil-A, but on YouTube, and you would view Every Life Has a Story. It's just a real quick video, less than 3 minutes, and it just gives you captions, and it kind of brings you to the perspective that everybody has something going on. Everybody out there, no matter who it is, some of them are even happy things.
Yeah.
But the predominant thing is you got something that's just kind of dragging you down. You're thinking about So give that to God and focus on being a blessing and not a burden, and get rid of those distractions. The same thing that you guys have been talking in your
Yeah.
messages.
Yeah.
Just let it all go. A very wise man in Chick-fil-A told me, this has been almost 10 years ago, but he said, you got three buckets in life. You got the things that you can control, the things that maybe you can't control, but you can influence. And then you got the things that you can't control. And if you take those things that you can't control and you put them away,
Yeah.
give them to God, do whatever with them, but throw them away and focus on these other two things, life gets a lot better,
It's
a
great.
lot happier. So
Well, I am so happy that you shared your story. And I'm excited for not only our church to hear your story, but others that will hear this. And I pray that people really do listen to the whole thing because your story is one that will really have an impact on people that maybe we don't even know how far it will go. So I'm just grateful that you came. And I just want to say to everybody who's been watching today or listening on a podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. And I pray that you hear what Larry said and that you do prioritize your relationship with God above all. You can be content. You don't have to go down this path of striving because God is right here and God is ready and willing to sit down with you and share the most beautiful things you've ever heard in your life. So pray God's blessing on all of you. Until next time.